I am super excited to be able to open up conversation on multi-store ownership. I'm very passionate about this topic. So let's get started. Signs you might not be ready to be a multi-store owner, or that you probably need a better strategy to succeed. 1, you like to stay in your comfort zone and in control of everything. 2, you think it's a path to quick money. 3, you don't know how to turn marketing and sales goals into actionable plans, or how to really read the story that is within reports. 4, you're basically an incredibly exceptional employee, spending almost all of your time working in your business instead of working on your business. And 5, you make a lot of great plans, but taking action, maybe tomorrow. And 6, you don't delegate, but you just do it all yourself because you can do it better and faster anyway. I'm just messing around with you. These are funny little things to me that are quirky for us as owners. So how about I give you a little bit of information about me? My time with Kid to Kid began in early 2008 when we took over a store that had been seized for tax evasion. It was closed for 6 months, and it ran in the black from our day one, and within 3 years, we had doubled the volume of that location. As partners, my husband and I made an excellent team. I fell into the role of the head of managing all operations and finances and businessy things. Todd became the head of all things technical, marketing, and a general Mr. Fix-It. He had his strengths and I had mine. In 2012, we built out another Kid to Kid. And by 2015, that store was named Store of the Year and was just shy of $1 million in sales. And then in mid-2015, we took over a struggling UC. All of our stores always received elite status. We had incredible longevity and loyalty with our team. In fact, 3 of our store managers were at annual meeting. 2 have become owners of their own stores, and 1 is a support with Base Camp. I've been on many owner panels during the annual meetings over the years, and I was a training star for new owners and had owners also send their managers to my stores to be trained. I like to think that I was an innovative owner and on the front end of many of the changes the system has made over the last decade. My personal style was more to just keep my head down and focus on running my stores. I was always pushing to improve everything. I would say that one of my gifts is to look at things and see ways to improve efficiencies. In early 2016, just 6 months into the amazing turnaround of the UC, I had an abrupt and full life breakdown. I personally shut down and had to pull completely out of everything overnight. Sadly, the stores slowly suffered without adequate leadership, and they grew more out of balance as time went on. About a year ago, we sold both Kid to Kid stores and closed down the UC. And after a 2.5-year period of convalescence, I joined Base Camp this last August, and I am very blessed to be back in the business that I love and back in this family of owners. One of my personal long-term goals with my position with Base Camp is to help develop the specialized support that is needed now for owners of multiple and cross-concept locations. So I have personal experience with a new build-out, with transfer ownership, cross-concept ownership, selling a store, and closing a store. Our time here in this session is really dedicated to the owner and the district manager. I don't think it's really for the day-to-day manager who runs the operations in store, because we aren't going to be talking about how to run or operate a store. We are talking about how to own and lead an organization that consists of multiple stores. My plan for us is to spend some time talking about you and how you can be the best leader that you can be, and what I think are some ways to lead well. Part 2 is a discussion of us digging into some tangible and practical ways of how to run multiple locations in sustainable and profitable ways. So just how important is the owner of a business? Have you heard of the 40% rule as it pertains to franchising? Greg Nathan, who is an author and runs the Franchise Relationship Institute, said that a franchisee contributes an average of 40% to the success of a particular business. The other 60% that contribute to the success is the concept development, things like the location, the systems, the brand, etc. And I'm sure you've also heard the saying that it's people who run the systems, not systems who run people. I want to focus on that 40% concept because that is you, the owner. The single greatest factor in the success of your business is you. I want to say that again. The single greatest factor to the success of your business is you. You contribute the most to the business. So what is it that an owner brings? Well, I want to take a look at horse racing. I think it's a perfect analogy. We are going to look at betting on the ponies because that is where you win. Anyone here ever bet in a horse race? Well, the primary purpose of horse racing is the income that is generated from gambling. The truth is that racing is not necessarily valued for the thrill of the sport itself. People join in because they're betting on it. So, the single track here represents to me owning one store. But when you jump into multi-store ownership, this is more likely what your stores look like. It's a much more complex track. And I see our employees as being the horse that's actually running the race. And our horse needs to wear blinders and stay focused on what's in front of them. I like to think of Mary Poppins as our jockey who's riding the horse, who's managing the store. So our jockey, to me, represents our manager. Mary Poppins is a good manager. She encourages that pony to ride and run faster and harder. I like to think of Miss Frizzle as our trainer and our coach. She's our operational processes. And without her best practices, our stores would be chaos or more chaos. And we'd have to have a vet on our team to take care of our horse. So, of course, that's Barbie. She keeps everything healthy. To me, the vet represents the company culture. And then we have to have our owner, who is our financier, our visionary, overseeing everything, the Barbie entrepreneur. And the whole reason why we are running this race is our customers. We are betting that our customers are going to choose to join in and be a part of our race in our stores. We are totally in a race, and in order to win at this race, we have to have a strategy. But before you can have a winning strategy that can be effective, you have to have a company culture in place. And there are a lot of different pieces that go into having a healthy company culture. One of the most important pieces is psychological safety. In 2012, Google embarked on an initiative code named Project Aristotle. It studied 180 of its own teams over a 2-year period to figure out what it takes to build a perfect team. They analyzed statistics and data of every kind. They analyzed the people, and they could find no tangible evidence, no consistent patterns that made any difference on whether a team was successful or not. But then they dug further in to look at intangible data. And the results showed, more than anything else, that psychological safety is the most important factor on whether a team can be successful or not. This is basically defined as a feeling, a sense of safety that comes in interpersonal risk-taking. The paradox is that Google's intense data collection and number crunching led to the same conclusion that good managers have always known, that the best teams have members who listen to one another and show sensitivity to feelings and needs. I'm not going to dig much deeper into the psychological safety concept, but I encourage you to jot that down and take time to research this idea of psychological safety and how it applies specifically to you and to the dynamics of your own teams. How does this play out? What does it look like in staff or buyer or manager meetings? What does it look like when you walk in the store or when you're there to work for the day? What I found, though, is that it takes a lot of courage to be a leader who can look deeply at himself and see the weak links in ourselves. It takes courage to trust others with our flaws. It takes courage to help those in your employ to reach their full potential. It takes courage to let go of full control over markdowns, or buying, or ordering new product, or scheduling, or even payroll. It takes courage to let those whom you have hired do their job. It takes courage to adapt and make changes. It takes a lot of courage to adapt a growth mindset in the face of a perceived threat or challenge or criticism of your leadership. Insecurity and defensiveness are natural responses. They are innate in our first response to these challenges, especially when a challenge taps into our own weak areas. And as leaders, we have to fight hard against that natural response and respond to those under our leadership from a secure place of calm. It takes courage to lead from a place that is vulnerable and truly open to feedback in the face of anything less than perfection. It takes courage to put our own egos aside. The culture that you have created in your business intentionally or unintentionally is most likely a huge factor in whether you and your team are unconsciously sabotaging success or intentionally aiding in its success. Company culture is present in your words and in your actions. It is a living, breathing part of the store, and it's there whether you know it or not. Scarily, it is caught even more than it can be taught. It is organic in nature, but it can be defined and encouraged to grow in ways you choose. A single owner operator can get by without putting much effort into this. But when you expand to multiple locations, this store culture is a tangible thing that has to be taken seriously. It is my belief that the culture is the root of what drives everything in the organization, for better or for worse. And our store culture, I believe, is the biggest portion of that 40% that an owner contributes. So what is your company culture? What's the personality of your company? I encourage you to take a note of this. Take time to analyze what it's really like inside your organization. Are your staff afraid of you? Do they play it safe, or are they free to take initiative? If they take initiative and it goes badly, are they punished or rewarded if it goes well? Does your staff love what they do and who they do it with? Do they know what they're doing it for? I think there are really only three kinds of cultures within our store environment. Toxic, and a culture that's full of life. And a culture ultimately is a toxic culture. To me, a toxic company culture has no direction. It looks like employees who don't trust each other and play it safe. It looks like fear in the leader and fear of the leader. It looks like fear of making mistakes. It looks like scarcity in terms of a lack of generosity with each other It looks like scarcity or a lack of what is needed to properly even do the job. It looks like a leader answering defensively. It looks like blaming. It looks like no one really cares. It looks like a lack of follow-through. A toxic culture looks like unproductive people and minimum effort. It looks unhappy. To me, a life-giving company culture looks like a team of engaged people sharing in the pursuit of a known common goal. It looks like caring for each other. It looks like having a place of belonging. It looks like the freedom to take initiative for creative problem solving. It looks like flexibility. It looks like a place where needs, wants, ideas, and feedback can be expressed and heard. It looks like trusting that each other will do what they say they will do. It looks like collaboration. It looks like a family. And it looks happy. One of the ways that I set out to establish a solid, life-giving culture was by taking day one for a new hire to be with me, the owner. I knew that I wasn't going to be working side by side with these people, and I wanted them to know who I was, who they worked for, and why I even owned these stores. I wanted them to understand my philosophy of business, which is simply relationships and people do come first. I wanted them to know they were joining a work family and that we were a place that cared about them. I wanted them to understand that I knew that a job was more than just a paycheck. I wanted them to love what they did and who they did it with. I wanted them to know that because of their satisfaction within their job, that they would be able to provide the customer interactions that would make the store successful. I wanted them to understand that their paycheck ultimately didn't come from me, but that it was coming from the customer. I wanted them to come away from their first day and be able to answer the question that everyone would ask them, which was, how was it? How was your first day? I wanted them to answer with a smile on their face and say, it was great. I wanted them to understand that they represented the actual living, breathing face of Kid to Kid, that their interactions with the customers were the customer's interaction with Kid to Kid. I wanted them to know that I and the managers had their back so they could have the customer's back. And most importantly, I wanted to start out their time working for me by making an ally of them. I didn't want the employee to see me as a scary owner. I wanted to intentionally build loyalty to me, not loyalty to the manager who they would be working with on a daily basis and actually having a deeper relationship. But I wanted their loyalty to be with me, the owner. I strove to present myself as the good guy. The managers were the ones who were responsible to be the jockey who cracked the whip if it was needed. I wanted nothing to ever get in the way of my having a positive relationship with the employee. I found that if I was having to step into a situation, I was probably firing them. Because if I could maintain the employee's loyalty to me, they would be less likely to want to hurt the business. If their loyalty lay with the manager, well, stealing from the business wouldn't be stealing from the manager with it, would it? At the core of my success with my team was a simple philosophy coined by Jim Collins. People are the most important asset we have. Investing in your team ultimately is an investment in yourself, because when you have empowered others to do the job you hired them for, it'll free you up to do what they can't ever do, and that is be the owner. It frees you up to move and expand within your strengths as the owner, as the visionary, and what you can contribute from the top down is exponential to the greater success of your organization. I have found that once you empower team members, your team will get happier and things will get done, and it will be easier for you. I know that for us as owners, a happy team is probably not our highest goal. As owners, we're generally focused on profitability and our goals and this long list of objectives that need to be accomplished. These are all finite, definable targets, black and white targets, and they're very worthy targets. However, they aren't the only target we should be striving for. I have worked with teams of people that are incredibly happy, and I have witnessed teams of people that are not happy. And there is so much proof that happy teams dramatically outperform the teams of people who are not. So can an unhappy employee create a positive experience for the customer? Perhaps, but it's not very likely, and not at all likely to be consistent. Conversely, the opposite is almost a guarantee. A happy employee will tend to make a happy experience for the customer. And we all know that the word of mouth is the number one way that our stores gain new customers. And that word of mouth is dependent upon customers having an experience worth talking about. We all know people are way more likely to talk about the negative rather than the positive experiences. It's so important that our teams are creating these positive experiences consistently. Happy teams are difficult to measure. It isn't a black and white unit of measure. It's a vibe, but it can be very present. And there are many infinite, unmeasurable details that go into a happy team. But what they produce is very measurable. When I had to walk away from my organization abruptly, I had 37 employees. Over half had been with me for more than 2 years. 8 had been with me for over 4 years. I do think that my people worked harder for me because they knew that I cared about them and they knew that they could depend on me. They knew they could all depend on each other and that if there was a need, they would show up for each other in the way that I modeled showing up for them, and it would be taken care of. We all understood our purpose within the organization, and each knew their value to the whole. All goals were made clear and were measurable, meaning that they knew how to track their progress. I made my standards and expectations clear, and I followed up on them. And I also met the expectations they had on me. Have you ever taken time to think about that? What it is that your team expects of you? Remember our race? We are all in it to win it. And none of us want to forfeit or disqualify or be eliminated. Obviously, we are all gamblers because we're all owners. And we are totally in a race. And in order to win and have the customers betting on your horse, we totally have to have a strategy. I see the strategy of multi-store ownership falling into 4 main categories. Relational skills, and we just talked a little bit about psychological safety and culture. We have to have analytical and financial skills. We need to know how to read reports, understand data, have basic business acumen, cash flow, understanding, and budgeting wisdom. We need to have commitment and insistence. What I mean by that is that we need to be committed to personal development, our own growth. And we have to have support, whether it's family or a business partner. We need to have that support to succeed. And I also believe that the entrepreneurial drive, having a vision and persistence, plays a huge role on our winning the race. As I was working on this presentation, I spoke with many of you. And a common question that I heard that I would like to speak about was, what might it look like for me as the owner when I am in the store? What changes in that role in the store when I have multiple locations? So for me, when I had one store, I worked in the store. I was a key employee, buying 2 or 3 days a week. And I accomplished a lot in those 2 or 3 days. I was a superstar employee. I did owner duties such as bookkeeping, bill paying, product ordering, and stuff around my scheduled on-the-clock hours and around my life. For me, life and work pretty much blended together without a clear line of distinction. I rubbed shoulders with all of the staff, and they knew me and my moods, my personality, the good and the bad. They knew me as a coworker and as a boss. They knew that I'd probably leave a trail behind me as I merchandised, and that when I went in the racks to mark down or organize, that I would be venting about different things. It didn't matter. I was a coworker and the owner to them. When the second store opened, I would go to work there, and very quickly I was aware of tension in the air. Things weren't the same. It would get very quiet when I was around. And one day, the manager pulled me aside and said, "Miriam, they're afraid of you." This came at a time when I was drowning with managing the back end and startup of the second business. And I realized that something had to change with how I did things because it was all falling apart and falling out of control very fast. I was giving more and more of myself, and I knew that I was going to burn out and that it would be my 4 kids who would suffer the most. I've been called a bulldog. The status quo just isn't good enough for me, and I don't quit when I should. Sometimes I'm not sure if that's a blessing or a curse, but I hang on and fight until I win. And this is when Amy Lofgren was first mentioning Bob Negan of Whiz Bang Trainings, management trainings. So I ordered the $400 set and invested in myself as an owner for the first time. It was awesome. It was the first time that I'd ever thought about working on the business rather than working in the business. It helped me to systematize management. This was before Basecamp had any of the management binders or priority books. And in fact, several of the forms I created for myself were adapted and are in those binders. I decided that I would have to totally change the way I approached work. And by the time I was done, I had a dang good sustainable groove, and it looked kind of like this. My typical work week was 4 days during school hours. My 5th work day was a flex day for whatever extra things might need doing. In my 4-day week, I spent 1 day in each of my 3 stores and 1 day at my home office. When I was in a store, I was not a necessary scheduled body, and I did not come in to work in the store. I came in with 3 things in mind. I was there to assess the business and keep things on track. I was there to meet with the manager, and I was there to serve them in whatever way they needed. I made sure that the first thing I did was greet and chat with the employees. I took time to connect with them and find out about their life. I usually brought them a treat. When I was done, I would walk through every bit of the store, and I carried a notebook, and I would jot down anything that I had noticed or had questions about or was concerned about. I would look through the comm log and the marked down checklists and all of the different documentation things around the front counter. The team always watched me like a hawk as I did this, and I would make a point when I was done to praise the group on some area. I would not point out any negatives in front of the staff. Never in front of the staff. I made sure I was careful with any questions I asked in front of the team. I would try to save all of my questions for the manager. When I was done, the manager and I would go into the office and have a weekly meeting. I would let her start with anything she wanted to address, offering her advice and help as she needed, And I would make sure that I was writing down anything that she needed me to follow up on in my notebook, whether it was just supplies that they needed, or questions she needed answers to, or dealing with staffing problems. Anything that she needed from me, I made damn sure that I followed through with it. Because by doing that for her, I was empowering her to do her job and be successful at it. Because remember, she's the jockey that's riding the horse that's going to win the race for me. I would go through my notes of things that I had seen from my walk through the store, and we would then talk about what was coming up promotionally and make an action plan for implementation. We made sure that we were always focusing farther ahead of us. I was teaching her to think like an owner. Sometimes we'd then do training, going over certain reports, or we'd discuss how best to coach an employee. And then after our meeting, I would ask, what can I do to help you while I'm here? Often I was asking that question at the counter in front of the team, and I let them all suggest the best ways for me to help them be successful in their job. I was willing to do the things they didn't like to do or didn't have time for. Often they just wanted me to order more new products so they could hit their sales goals, or tidy the bows, or deal with some seasonal merchandising. Often I had the pleasure of dealing with the random bins of crap that piled up. Sometimes I'd even end up deep cleaning the break room or the office. Whatever it was, I made a point of offering, a point of serving their needs. I set the expectation on their shoulders for hitting our goals, and I saw my job when I was in the store as one that would try to provide what they needed to succeed in their job. With this plan, the atmosphere in the stores changed very quickly. They knew the routine and they didn't dread me coming. They looked forward to it. They didn't fear rubbing shoulders with me. They respected me and they wanted to please me. The manager became the one who implemented any needed coaching or direction. And the team was eager to do what she asked because they knew I would see it and praise them. I know that all of this played a part in the longevity and loyalty that I had with my staff. I know that this is a huge part of why we were successful and hit our goals. For me, this strategy worked.